These are complicated times to be talking about the animals that give us joy. I really wrestled with whether to go forward with this service, to be honest, because it feels like there are so many more pressing concerns, so much in the world of ministry that calls for our action, justice that needs our voice to be loud and consistent. And I worried that an animal blessing would seem tone deaf to the world around us. But my colleagues and friends have reminded me that the ministry of change we are engaging in is not for a week, a month, or even a year. This ministry of change, still during a pandemic, is meant to last. And that means our bodies, hearts, and spirits need to be sustained. We need joy and compassion for ourselves in order to be people of compassion out in the world, in order not to lose the faith that we need to keep fighting for equity and justice. And when I think about what has really sustained so many of us over the years, I simply can't think of a substitute for the animals that have been a part of our lives, because they remind us of our best selves. When I was growing up, I had two cats, Tashmoo and Winnie, and they couldn't have been more different from each other. Tashmoo was clever, devious, definitely king of the household. He was also a jerk to those who weren't us. But still, he was our jerk. Winnie, on the other hand, was sweetness personified. We used to joke that if an intruder ever came to the house, Tashmoo would protect us and Winnie would just try to nuzzle them to death. She was an equal opportunity lover. I remember one evening when I was an angsty teenager and I was crying. I don't even really remember why, but the cats came in. Tashmoo jumped into my lap, and Winnie gently climbed her paws up my arm and wiped away a tear with her paw. In that moment, it was impossible not to see the blessing that was my cats. And this is what animals have a way of doing for us. They don't necessarily show emotion in the same way that we do, but they make it clear that they can feel ours. It's a simple companionship that we often struggle to find in other humans because it's so unconditional. They don't care when we say something stupid that we wish we could take back. They don't quantify our worth based on what we accomplish. They don't make judgments about our character based on skin color, wealth, or immigration status. We're simply worthy just for being. And we have the right to exist simply because we do exist. It's a sentiment I wish humans shared. We Unitarian Universalists aspire to it, but human structures and cultures so often get in the way. This was a trap that Jason Bertrand fell into. Jason is a former prisoner in Florida, and he had a hard time believing that he or most other people had much of any worth. Societal structures failed him at every stage in his childhood years. His father was in prison. His mother abandoned him, leaving him to care for his sister. Like so many, he fell into a life of crime, one he now regrets but felt was his only option to keep a roof over his head. And at the age of 19, he went to prison for a sentence of 15 years for robbery. During the last year of his sentence, though, he got an opportunity that changed his life. He was admitted to the TAILS program, which stood for Teaching Animals and Inmates Life Skills. And it's a prison program that matches dogs and inmates, both in need of healing and recovery, so that the dogs can eventually be adopted. This is where Jason met Sugar Mama, a pit bull mix who'd been rescued from a dog fighting ring in which her back was broken in 3 separate places. She was a last-minute addition to the program because it wasn't clear that she would survive the surgeries. But she did. And from the moment Jason met her, they were inseparable. The more they worked together, the more he realized that he hadn't been allowed to have emotions for 15 years. That there was a whole person inside him that he didn't even know. That his aggression and selfishness in childhood and early adulthood was simply not having any sense of self-worth. As time went on, he started to see his old self in Sugar Mama's abuser, a person who had been deprived of connection for his whole life, and knew he didn't want to be that person. For the first time in his life, he had someone to talk to who wouldn't judge him. He had someone who would show him affection and didn't care about his past. All this from a dog who had been horribly abused, and yet somehow had an ability to connect with and trust another person in spite of it all. The purpose of the program is to get dogs ready to be adopted. But Jason couldn't bear to part with Sugar Mama. So the director of the program decided to make an exception. Jason would serve the remainder of his sentence and then could formally adopt Sugar Mama. He got out of prison in 2016. And Jason went on to meet his future wife, has had a stable job for the past 4 years, and he and his wife now have a doggy sibling for Sugar Mama. Jason is a man transformed because of the simple and unconditional grace that animals provide. And we need this grace now more than ever, because it is so easy to forget who we are, to forget our inherent goodness, to forget that we are worthy simply for being. But animals remember that in us, and they remind us that we are not the sum of our accomplishments. We are the love in our hearts. We are the companionship we offer one another. We are the compassion and solidarity that we provide in our moments of sorrow. We are a simple presence when there is nothing to fix. And we are these things even when we don't see them in ourselves. But our beloved animals do. They bring that presence out into the forefront. When my pregnancy with Tally took a turn for the worse, words cannot capture the healing that Angie provided. Because while I was on bed rest, praying that my blood pressure would stay in check, Angie was by my side, giving me kisses and sleeping on my feet. She may not have known what blood pressure was, but she knew that she was needed. And she knew that she was somehow protecting me. And in a time where I was so tempted to feel like I deserved the struggle, Angie reminded me that I didn't. She reminded me that what I deserved was her love, because it's a universal love that we all deserve. This is a time where so many of us are struggling to know ourselves as loved and worthy. We're isolated, we're sheltering in place, we're struggling with this horrific and cruel world that doesn't see humans as equally valid. But through all of this, we have a blessed reminder that we all deserve joy, that we all deserve love, that we all deserve companionship, that we all are worthy. And animals are sacred because they are a divine reminder of beauty, dignity, and worth. Now more than ever, we need our animals because they will remind us how joy and compassion go hand in hand. They show us the worth that's already there that we simply lose sight of in our struggles. They not only tend to our grief and trauma, they also teach us about who we want to be, who we really are, the person inside who's waiting to come out. It's a fallacy to think that animals need us to bless them. They are blessed all on their own. But we bless them all the same because it blesses us with a sacred moment to reflect upon how much good they do the world, how much they teach us about how to live into our Unitarian Universalist principles. Blessed are the animals, for they are the righteousness we seek. Blessed be, and amen.